Yeah, this is home. We've lived here almost 29 years. And so this is our home. My wife is a retired Cartersville School teacher. And 30 years, she said that's it. But we were at Tabernacle for 8 years, serving there. And about 20 years ago, the convention came and said, come help the 3,600 Georgia Baptist churches in the area of Sunday school and small groups and discipleship and everything else. And so that's what I've been doing for 20 years. Now in January, my role is going to change. I'm excited about this. I will no longer have the responsibilities of the entire state. I will not have the responsibilities of leading 5 different ministry teams. I get to work with y'all only. I will not have an office in Duluth. Won't have to drive through Atlanta. I will be the Northwest Regional Consultant, and so I'll be working just with the churches in Northwest Georgia. And looking forward to that. I already started digging in, seeing what's going on. I've got a notebook here where I've been looking at what's going on in the churches in the Bartow Association, trying to figure out a strategy of how we can do a better job of reaching people and discipling folks. It breaks my heart when I see the numbers of what's going on, not only in our churches in Bartow County, but also all over our state. But guys, let me just tell you, good things are happening in Northwest Georgia, and there's some good signs in some churches. But just like in your church, if you've only got 1 or 2 of your Sunday school classes that are doing a good job, it's not going to carry the whole load for the whole church. And so we need to strengthen as many churches as possible. So what I want to do today, I've got a little listening guide. So if I can get some help passing that around. It's not a box, but it is a process. The churches that I've been working with over the past several years, everything that we face, if you say, boy, we need more money in our church, that's a disciple-making issue. Oh, we're not reaching lost people like we should. Oh, that's a disciple-making issue. We can't get leaders in our church. That's a disciple-making issue. Listen, guys, the stuff that we're dealing with in our churches, that's not new. Paul said to Timothy and Titus, when you read 1st and 2nd Timothy and you read Titus, it's all about disciple-making. The issues that we face today are nothing more than us having a deficiency in our churches of disciple making. We're not making disciples. And here's what I found in that. The reason that our churches are not making disciples is because our pastors are not making disciples. Now I'll ask pastors, what are you doing to make disciples? I preach. Well, great, but that's not disciple making. Disciple making takes place in relationships, in small groups, 1-on-1, 2, 3, 5, small group. And the reason that our pastors are not discipling folks is because they weren't discipled. I gave my life to Christ as a junior in high school. That week, my youth director came to me and said, hey, every week we're going to get together. And so for the first year of my spiritual life, every Wednesday night for an hour and a half, Randy and I met together and he discipled me. He taught me how to pray. He taught me how to share my faith. He taught me how to read the Bible and study. And that's what I've been doing, my ministry. And so what I want to do is just share this with you. And that first blank, the first thing I want to say to you is this. Do something now. Write that down. Do something now. Do something now. A lot of pastors, a lot of churches talk about disciple making. They go to conferences. They get the latest books. And they talk about it. They discuss it. They have ideas. But when it gets down to it, they're not doing it. They're not sitting down with 2 or 3 guys in the church and they are reproducing themselves in those individuals. That's what Paul did with Timothy. That's what Jesus did with his 12. So, quit trying to get the perfect system. Quit trying to figure it all out. Quit trying to find the best curriculum. Just do something now. Find you 2 or 3 guys in the church and get together, read the Bible, talk about it, pray together, hold each other accountable. Do something now. Quit waiting. Do something now. And when you say, oh, we haven't figured out our system, listen, you'll never figure out your system. It will constantly be tweaked and changed and adjusted. So don't wait until you get the perfect system or the perfect curriculum. Do something now. Because if you don't start, you never will. Okay? So as you think about this disciple making, what I want to say to you, number 2, is this. Know what you and your church believes. I have had the opportunity to sit down and walk with several of our leading churches through this, and some of our key pastors, preachers in the state, and these guys have written books on being preachers, and teachers, and pastors, and church stuff. But I said, you got to write down what you believe. Not what, but what you believe. And it's been interesting to watch these guys struggle with this. To simply say, here's what I believe and why. And then to be able to defend it. And again, we're not talking about writing or dissertation. Just a couple of simple, because you're going to have to communicate it to your people. And if you make it complicated, if you make it long and drawn out, your people are not going to get it. And so, know what you believe. Know what your church believes. Don't just say, oh, we got the Baptist Faith and Message. That's good. But you need to personalize it and say, here's what we believe. Here's what I believe. And write it down, know it, and be able to defend it. Number 3, you need to determine what a disciple is, what they do, and how they live. What are those 10, 12, 15 core principles, attributes, characteristics, whatever term you want to use? What is it that makes that person a follower of Christ? Yeah, you need to know what you're producing. You know, the guys that work at the washing machine factory, they don't get together on Monday morning and say, hey, what do y'all want to make this week? No, they got an idea. Not only do they have an idea, but there's a plan. So many times in church, we have no idea what we're trying to make. We just sing songs, preach sermons, have programs, do stuff, and we just hope that something's going to change. Something's going to stick. So you got to know what you're trying to produce. And again, keep it simple. 10, 12, 15 characteristics, attributes, core principles, whatever term you want to use. But don't come up with a big old long list of thou shalls and thou shalt nots. Keep it simple. Keep it basic. Number 4, commit to groups as the primary strategy of making disciples. Groups, whether you call it Sunday school, small groups, life groups, connection groups, home groups, I don't care what term you use, groups has got to be your primary strategy of disciple making. Again, you're preaching great, but that's not your primary disciple making strategy. You're singing and worship, great, wonderful, but that's not your primary strategy of making disciples. Disciples are made in relational environments, in small groups, where there can be discussion and dialogue and accountability. Guys, you got to be involved in a group. What does that mean, Tim? Well, you got to be in a Sunday school class. You got to be in a group. For years, Johnny Hunt, largest church in Georgia, for years Johnny would say, hey, if you get 1 hour to be with us, don't come here. Be in a Sunday school class. And he, still to this day, is in a Sunday school class. I think about Jim Putman out in Idaho. Strong, small group, disciple-making church. He built a room about this size on the back of his house so that he could host 4 and 5 and 6 groups a week in his home. Now, he don't lead them, but he's got his chair in there. And they say, oh, my group's at the pastor's house. You got to be involved. And you got to proclaim that. You got to say, guys, the most important thing we do is make disciples. And that happens in our groups. And if you're really going to be in our church, you got to be in a group. And if you're really going to grow, you got to be in a group. Number 5, develop the steps toward spiritual maturity. We've all seen the Rick Warren baseball diamond, first base, second base, third base, home. That's what just the steps of spiritual maturity. I mentioned to you Jim Putman. You know the life cycle of being a dad, an infant, child, a young adult, a parent. You've got to be able to identify and say, here's what it means to grow spiritually. And you've got to help your people understand that, and first of all, be able to see where they are. So develop those steps toward spiritual maturity. And following that is number 6, and that is you need to be ready to measure the individual spiritual progress. Yep, they need a test. You know, like we've all done the spiritual gift assessments, you know. There's a wonderful tool that Lifeway has available on transformational discipleship that you and your people can take that assessment and you can say, here's where we're growing spiritually, but here's where we need to work. And as the pastor, you're going to get the overall picture for the church. But they will get the individual picture for themselves. Now, Lifeway is not going to email you and say, hey, listen, Pastor, Lucille over there that took this test, she's really trouble. Watch out for her. They're not going to do that. They're not going to do that. But you get the overall picture of where your church is. And I put the link in the notes there for you to be able to go and look at that and begin to use that tool. It's a wonderful, wonderful tool. Number 7, you need to establish the elements of a successful group. Well, we've had Sunday school forever. And when I ask the question, well, what does good Sunday school look like? Pastors can't answer that question. And I'll have pastors say, well, you know, we're going to quit doing Sunday school. We're going to do groups. Well, listen, if your Sunday school stunk, and you start groups in the homes, guess what? Your groups in the home gonna stink. You've got to know what it means to have a good, healthy group. And I've given you some there. So these are mine. You know, you got to have your own. What do I think is a good group? Need to be praying for each other. Need to be a praying group. We need praying for each other, not just in group, but away from group. Praying for each other, praying for those not in the group. A good group is one that says, hey, I got a lost kid. I got an unchurched brother. I've got a neighbor that doesn't know Jesus. Y'all pray with me. So praying for those not in the group. And spending time in serious prayer. You know, not, dear Lord, thank you for my group. Be with us while we study. Amen. You know, that's almost like the blessing at the meal, you know. But having some serious time in prayer, calling out people's names. And so doing some serious prayer time in group. Number two there, when I think about a successful group, for me, spending a vast majority of the group time in good quality Bible study. We had one national consultant that said, you really only need to do about a halfway good job of teaching the Bible for people to like it. No, listen, it needs to be quality. It needs to be quality. And listen, if we're in our group and we get together and we're talking about the ball game and the flower club and we're doing all that stuff, and then somebody looks at their watch and goes, "Woo, we got 5 minutes, we better study the Bible." No, I'm talking about quality time. Number three, building real transparent relationships so that the members are spending time together outside of the group. If all we do is spend time together on Sunday morning or on Tuesday night and we're not doing life together, we're not going to be growing. So we've got to be investing in each other's lives outside of the group. Next, growing in their faith and in their love for Jesus. You may have a sweet fellowship, good group, man, they do great things, but listen, if we're not growing to be more like Christ, we've missed it. Next, reaching out to those that are not Christians and having not only a local but a global view. What is it that your group can do to lead the people that they know across the street to Jesus, but what is it that we're doing as a group to be involved in reaching people on the other side of the planet? And not just doing things, but actually giving a verbal witness. Okay? See, the easiest thing for us to do is give money. Next, training each person in the skills needed to grow and prepare them for their place of service. When Paul looked at Timothy and he says, okay, you take what you've seen me do, take the stuff that you have heard me say, and I want you to teach others who will sit in your Sunday school class for the next 50 years. No, he says, I want you to take what you have seen me do in the presence of me, which I want you to teach others who will teach others. That's our goal. Our goal is not to get them to come and sit in our group from now on. Our goal is to grow them up and kick them out. To be like that mama bird. Kicking those babies out of the nest. So we've got to train people. We've got to reproduce ourselves. And then also we've got to be starting new groups. We've got to be multiplying new groups. Christian Schwartz, who is a German statistician, I don't agree with all of his theology, but he has done more in the study of the Christian church than anybody else. If you've read Natural Church Development or any of his resources, he's the number one expert on the Christian church worldwide. He's looked at more churches, studied more churches than anybody. And what he found was the number one factor that determined whether a church was healthy or not was whether their groups were reproducing. Not the preaching style or the music style or the architecture or the location or the denomination. It was whether their groups reproduced. So, we got to be about making disciples. If you don't hear anything else today, I hope you heard the very first thing. And that is do something now. Quit trying to figure it out. Quit trying to get all these things that we've talked about figured out. Just get with a couple of guys. Get the Bible out. Read the Bible together. Don't start in Leviticus. Maybe 1 John. Okay? Just get together. Study God's Word. Talk about it. Pray together. Hold each other accountable. And guys, we're not going to make an impact on this culture through our programs and through our activities. We will make an impact on our culture when we do what Jesus did, and that is make disciples. That's right. So, Questions, comments? We've got a couple of things for you. One is Robbie Gallaty's the guy that everybody's talking about. This is their process, their pathway that they've identified. I put some on the table over there. Again, you cannot take somebody's model and make it your own. It won't work. But I wanted to give you an idea of what one church has done. And he's got, again, the marks of a healthy group. Why that's important. And he's also got the daily disciplines of a disciple. All of those things that we've talked about. And then over on the table also the disciples' path. This is a curriculum. Again, curriculum's not the answer. Okay? If curriculum was the answer, we would have reached the world a long time ago. But this is a resource. If you say, I really want to do something, but I don't have the time nor the skills to figure it out. What can I do? Tim, what can I do that Randy did with you when you was a junior in high school? This right here. That's not what we did, but this is something you can sit down with a young believer, somebody that wants to be discipled, and you can walk together. So I've got one per church back there, and that's about a $50 value that I'm giving to you as a gift, okay? Because you care about this stuff, and I want to help you. Questions, comments, complaints?
Tim, when we look at this sheet right here,
Yeah.
this can be overwhelming. But you said, just go get a couple of guys.
Yeah.
You don't have to do the whole church at one time, do you?
No, and again, that I went over on that green sheet. That's a year-long process, of walking through that, of figuring those things out, of being intentional. It takes a long time to get all that together, but you can't wait. Just find a couple of guys, start in 1 John, meet every week, pray together. Okay?
Jim, what was the German author that you cited? What was his name?
Christian Schwartz. If you've never read Natural Church Development, I would encourage you to get that. Again, I don't agree with all of his theology, but he is a German. And when he talks, you can't understand him. But anyway, he has done more research on every continent, Christian churches. Okay? Other questions, comments?
Tim, you said that when you ask pastors, most of them say they disciple from the pulpit.
Yeah.
Why is that not sufficient? Because I was trained in seminary that that's what I was supposed to do.
Well, again, disciples are made in a relational environment. I mean, who taught you how to drive a car? You didn't learn to drive a car by watching the videos in driver's ed. Somebody had to sit in that seat next to you and risk their life to teach you how to drive. Same true making disciples. We can have the wonderful sermons and the wonderful worship services, but until somebody is sitting there with us doing life together and saying, hey, I'm having trouble with my marriage. How do I raise Christian kids? How do I deal with this temptation of pornography? All of that stuff. You're not going to deal with those issues in a worship service, but you can do in life together. And that's why disciples are made in relational environments.
Yeah, if somebody raises their hand and starts dealing with that in a public service, it's a...
The usher going to come get them.